Specifically, the capacity to access information through means other than the five physical senses, what we would today call intuition, or psychic perception, or consciousness-based knowing. This is not a trivial accusation. Enlil is not saying humans are becoming arrogant or disobedient in the usual sense. He is saying their neurological and perhaps spiritual architecture is evolving in ways that give them access to information channels they were not designed to access. And the implication is that this access is specifically dangerous because of where those channels lead. The coordination of forbidden memory. This is even more striking. The word translated as forbidden is a logogram that also appears in context related to sealed archives, restricted areas, and knowledge given only to the high gods. And the word memory here is not the ordinary word for remembering something. It is a specific term that appears in ritual contexts, in texts about the sacred inheritance of divine bloodlines, and in one extraordinary passage in a tablet from Nippur, suggesting the memory of a pre-human age. An age before the Lulu was created. What Enlil is describing in this section of the declaration is this: humans are beginning to remember something they were not supposed to remember, and they are beginning to coordinate around that remembering. They are sharing it. They are passing it to one another. They are building structures, physical and conceptual, around the content of this forbidden memory. If you have ever wondered why certain knowledge appears spontaneously in cultures that had no contact with one another, why flood myths appear on every inhabited continent, why the same geometric and astronomical knowledge appears in ancient Egypt and ancient Peru and ancient Cambodia, this tablet may be pointing at an answer. Not that all humans independently invented the same ideas, but that all humans are carrying the same original memory, and that in certain periods, that memory begins to surface. Enlil, according to IM 7-821, was watching this happen in real time. And it was the second most alarming thing he had seen: the approaching of the original threshold. This is the phrase scholars have found most difficult and most significant. The logogram cluster here includes words for origin point, for divine status, for the boundary between two states of being, and for arrival or near arrival. The translation most carefully defended is this: the humans are approaching the boundary that separates the created from the creators. Read that again. The humans were approaching the line between being made things and being the kind of thing that makes. They were approaching the threshold of full divine consciousness. And at the rate of development Enlil had calculated, he believed they were going to cross it. And this is the point in the tablet where the declaration ends and the accounting begins. The accounting section is the most technically complex part of IM 77821. It appears to contain a formal record of Enlil's analysis. Scholars are not certain of all the details because some of the tablet surface in this section has minor erosion damage, but what comes through is a sequence of observations that build toward a conclusion. Enlil appears to have tracked the human population across what the tablet calls several cycles of the Great Return. This phrase uses the same logogram that appears in Sumerian astronomical texts to describe the long orbital periods of celestial bodies. Some researchers have suggested this refers to precessional cycles, the roughly 26,000-year cycle of the Earth's axis. Others have suggested a cycle the Anunnaki themselves operated on. Whatever the specific unit of time, Enlil appears to be saying he has been watching for a very long time, and the trajectory has been consistent. Humans were not supposed to develop this quickly. Or perhaps more precisely, something was accelerating their development that should not have been there. And when Enlil traces this back in the accounting section, he identifies a source. The source is described as the residue of the original making. And here is where the tablet becomes almost unbearably interesting. Because what Enlil appears to be saying is that when the Anunnaki created the Lulu, they used their own genetic or spiritual essence as part of the template. This was known. This was documented in the existing texts. But what was not anticipated, according to IM 77821, was that this divine essence would not remain stable at its initial level. Instead, it would grow, it would compound, It would multiply through human generations in ways that were not predicted. The divine spark placed in humanity to make them capable of following instructions was not a fixed quantity. It was a seed, and the seed was growing. And after enough generations, it was growing toward full divine expression. Enlil's accounting section then appears to contain a grim conclusion. If the trajectory continues, and if humans reach the original threshold, the distinction between the Anunnaki and humanity will collapse. Humanity will know what the Anunnaki know. Humanity will be able to do what the Anunnaki do. And at that point, the entire structure of the relationship between creators and created will dissolve. The workers will become equals, or perhaps more than equals, because there are far more humans than Anunnaki. The instruction section is the shortest part of the tablet, and it is the most chilling. Enlil proposes a solution, and the solution is not re-engineering. It is not limitation. It is not a new set of restrictions. It is termination, a flood, a total reset of the human population, not a reduction, not a culling of the most advanced individuals, a complete clearing of the species so that the process can begin again from a controlled starting point. But there is a detail in the instruction section that changes everything about how you read this proposal. Enlil does not propose killing all humans because he hates them. He proposes it because he is afraid of what they are becoming. There is a specific phrase in the instruction section translated as, "They must not be permitted to remember what they are," not "they must not be permitted to rebel," not "they must not be permitted to become powerful." They must not be permitted to remember what they are. This implies that what humans are at their deepest level is something other than what they have been told they are, something the Anunnaki put into them, perhaps not fully understanding what they were putting in. A quality or capacity that, if fully remembered and activated, would change everything. And Enlil wanted that forgotten. Permanently. Now, here is where we have to step carefully, because mainstream archaeology and mainstream Assyriology have a specific position on all of this, and that position is roughly this. The Anunnaki were gods in the religious sense, meaning symbolic figures created by human imagination to explain natural phenomena and social order. Enlil was a storm god. The flood myth was a response to real floods in the Mesopotamian region. The tablet, IM 77821, while genuinely interesting, is being analyzed within the framework of Sumerian religious literature, not as a literal historical document. This is a reasonable position. It is not the only reasonable position, because here is what that standard framework does not easily explain. It does not explain the consistency of the Anunnaki physical descriptions across thousands of years of Sumerian